If you're a Java developer, there is a high chance that you have either worked with or heard of Lombok. It's a library that lets us developers focus more on the actual code and logic than on boilerplate code, which is extremely important in frameworks like Hibernate, which require all entities to define getters and setters for all persisted properties. As a result, using such library as Lombok saves us both coding and time. My name is Marcin and I'm a software developer. Welcome to my channel where I share practical tips, tricks and code snippets. Today I'll be talking about Lombok and I will show you how, with some little extra configuration, it can be used to help us with Spring dependency injection. Let's go! Lombok is named after an island that is located just east of the Java island. And Project Lombok is an annotation processor that works in the compile phase of our project by taking our classes, looking for annotations, and enhancing our classes with the desired features. The list of features provided by Lombok is rather big and includes many useful things like, for example, generating builders, getters, setters, toString methods, equality, hash codes, and constructors. And constructors are the topic on which we will look at today in the context of Spring dependency injection. Here we have a POM for a very simple project generated through Spring Initializer, in which I have included just Spring Web and Project Lombok. And our service will be a person service that contains a list of people famous throughout the history with their height, and the user can find out which of these people are shorter than the given height. And this method will be exposed in a controller. Now I have injected the person service in the controller, but I haven't yet created the constructor for it. And we could create a constructor by hand, but with this approach, anytime we want to add some new dependency, we will need to change the constructor and generally remember about it. So for this, we will use Lombok and we will tell it to generate a constructor for us. Now Lombok has a couple of annotations related to constructors. It has a noargs constructor, which just generates a default empty constructor just in the case of plain Java class with no constructors. It has a allargs constructor, which takes all fields and generates a constructor with all fields, and which is most relevant for this case, the required args constructor. And the main difference between required args constructor and all args constructor is that the required args constructor will take into the account only the fields that are marked with final and are not initialized. So in this case, if we initialize the person service to anything, even null, it wouldn't be picked up by Lombok and it wouldn't appear in the constructor. If the field is not initialized and it's final, it will appear in the required args constructor. And we can verify this by using the Lombok, which is a utility provided by the Lombok team, and it lets us generate a class with all of the Lombok annotations stripped and the relevant code generated. So in this case, we see that Lombok created the constructor with one parameter. And we can test this by running the application. And we can use our favorite REST client to call the method on our constructor, and we see that we have a list of results. Each of them is less than the desired 170 centimeters. Now let's think about what should we do if we want to include something that is annotated? Like example, we would like to limit the number of returned entries to a configurable value. So let's start with creating an integer field. Let's call it max entries. And we would like to take this from the configuration, so let's annotate it with strings value, and the property would be, let's just call it max entries. And now, if we go to our resources, let's create a new file, call it application.yaml, and here let's create our max entries and set it to number 2. And now what we would expect is that if we stream it and limit to the max entries, we expect that we will get only 2 people. So let's run our application, and we see that the run failed because Spring searches for a bean of type int and it couldn't find it. So that tells us that Lombok didn't copy this annotation to the constructor. We can confirm it by doing a delombok, and as we can see, there is no annotation on the max entries. Now, does it mean that we have to create a constructor by hand and drop the required args constructor? Well, definitely not. One thing that we can do is drop the final keyword here and just let Spring inject it by field injection. But we don't want to use field injection because in all cases constructor injection is more favorable. Plus, we want to have this field as final so that we can make sure that it will never change once initialized. So, luckily for us, Lombok comes with a mechanism of configuration. All it takes is to create a new file called lombok.config, and in this file we can define Lombok copyable annotations. And this is a list, so to this list we will add our value annotation. So now what this does is Lombok knows that when generating constructor, it should copy all these annotations to the generated constructor. And let's check it once again by running the application. So now we see that, as expected, we have only 2 results. We can also further confirm it by delomboking our class, and here it is. The annotation is in place. Also, what is worth noting is that with this configuration you can not only use the value, you do not have to limit yourself to the value annotation, but you can use any annotations you want on the field, like for example qualifier or other annotations that are used by Spring dependency injection or other libraries that you are using. So as you can see, this is a very useful feature, and for me it was like a hidden gem in Lombok. This concludes our video. Thank you for watching, have a good day, and I hope to see you soon on my channel. Goodbye.